Do you intentionally structure your life around that, around having more of that sense of joy? Or did it just happen, as it does really for most of us, right? We just allow it to sort of happen and it hits us and it's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's interesting to me that we very often don't really attend to it enough to say, what was it about that experience that was so incredibly wonderful? And is there any part of that that I can set up in my life so I can experience it more often? When I do family weekend at Michael's house, this is one of the things we do with the families, is because, boy, they've been through the mill. I mean, really. And the family members are so anxious and hurt and hoping that there's not going to be a relapse and hoping that this treatment will do it, and you can just feel it in the room. And a lot of what I do is try to reconnect them in their relationships and get them back to remember an experience of joy that happened in the relationship and what they can do within the context of that relationship to increase those experiences of joy. And what we find, and we found this over a long period of time, and many of you know it too, is that those who are struggling with an addiction often cannot recall an experience of joy outside of their addiction. That's profound. They haven't had it, they don't know it, and the idea that you could even experience joy without being drunk or high sounds stupid to them. They didn't even want to come into recovery because they thought it meant they had to give up joy, because it's that married in their minds, right? So really beginning to, in our practice and in our life, cultivate and ask our clients, what brings you joy? And what are you doing in your life to increase a space for more of that so that it can happen? In order to do that, we have to understand what the conditions of joy are. Now, moments of joy. We have to live as is rather than as if. We have to be present in the moment for ourselves, for who we are right now. We have to accept reality and be fully here if we're going to experience joy. A great example of this, and it always kind of makes me laugh when I see these shows on TV that are, is it Bridezilla? Or some of those that, I've just seen them in passing where there's so much emphasis put on having joy on this day and so much money, my gosh. It's incredible that's spent on this to try to make it happen, right? And it's all as if, rather than really being here, present in the moment for what is happening. It's all about the show rather than being present. One of the conditions of joy is learning to be here and be now. Be present, right here, right now. Deep validation, as David shared, I think anyone with a new child, that's such incredibly deep level of validation that everything that you've done in your life to this point is worthwhile now because this creature has come into your life, this person, this human being. Incredibly deep validation. Now that level of deep validation isn't necessary for every experience of joy, but I will tell you that we do need to have an element of validation present, whether it be self-validation or validation from those around us or a combination of it. If you think about, you mentioned writing. When we experience joy in writing, it's when we validate ourselves for what we've written, right? And we feel like, this is good. This sounds good. I am proud of this. This makes me feel good. And we're right there with the writing in that moment, and we feel good about it, and we can self-validate. Now, in here is the devil. Because if you can't self-validate, how are you going to experience joy?
It's not possible.
It's very difficult, if possible at all. So you're doing a dance as a therapist to begin to teach them how to self-validate so that they can begin to experience joy, so that they can begin to build the experience that build that sense of authentic self.